Hi, I'm Terrell Turner, the host of the Business Talk Library, and today I have a very special guest. And this is a very special guest because every time I see her videos on LinkedIn, I am always intrigued about what she is going to say. So, Jackie Hermes, welcome to the show.
Thank you. What a nice intro. I love that.
I will say that when it comes down to LinkedIn, as I look at different places I'm getting information from or insight, I always look forward to seeing your videos because it's one of those things. The way I explained it to my wife is, I'm like, you see this face, Jackie has one of those most inviting faces. She smiles. You're gonna like either laugh or you're gonna enjoy it. And at some point in the video, she's gonna hit you with a moment of truth where you're like, "Ooh, yeah, that is right. I need to work on that." So,
The moments of truth. It's so funny because when I do stuff like that, I'm like talking to myself too. It's like I publish the content of the messages that I need to hear and the things that I'm like trying to pound into my own brain. So I'm like right there with you, getting hit with the truth and then repeating it to you.
well, that is good, and I always appreciate it because one of the big things that that really encouraged me to do more of the Business Talk Libraries because I feel like sometimes we don't have enough, I could say, real conversations about entrepreneurship to where people
Mhm.
hear about all the good things of it, but sometimes that some parts of the journey are not as great, and sometimes we don't have it as figured out to where we're trying to learn in the process. So I really appreciate, like I said, the honesty and the vulnerability in your content.
Thank you. Yeah, honestly, though, like who does have it figured out? I've been running this company for 7 years and I still am learning new things every single day. And so I think there's a movement toward honesty and showing, like, hey, this is what's really going on. And anyone who acts like everything's all good every day and growing a business, in my opinion, is absolutely full of it. So,
I agree. Now, so let's talk a little bit about what was your background before you started your business 7 years ago?
yeah, so I started my career at GE in sales and marketing, and then moved into a mid-sized software company from there. And they were about $80 million when I left, and I was running the marketing department. So I honestly had, let's see, 7 years ago, I don't know, maybe a handful of years of professional experience before I started the company, mostly in marketing and sales.
Mhm. Now, how did that feel? I mean, going from, like I said, having a few years of, experience at someone else's company to now launching, what was that initial, I guess you'd say, feeling like?
I mean, I've always been like, the kind of person that thinks I can figure anything out. I had never worked at an agency and I was like, I'm gonna, like Google it and figure out how to build a company. I don't know how to fund it. I don't know what I need to do, but a mix of like being really curious and trying to figure all of that out and having some really good coaches and mentors, I think really helped me along the way. I'm also just too stubborn to lose. So I think that's a big part of it too, because like looking back at the last 7 years, there are a million times where I think a lot of people would have thrown in the towel. And I don't know if it's like good or bad stubborn that made me keep going, but at this point, I'm glad I did.
Mhm. And that's interesting because I posted something on LinkedIn today, something that I was thinking about myself, where I talked about how when it comes to whether you're starting a business or even if you're trying to grow in a career, it's just like having to find something to drive you, some like real reason. Because when you hit, like you said, those tough times, the ups and the downs, there will be a ton of reasons for you to quit.
Mhm.
So when you think about other than just like that your stubbornness, was there something else that was kind of like your motivator as to, hey, this helped me get through the tough moments?
Yeah, I mean, I started the company with a baby. My son was not even 2 when I started it, and I adopted my daughter while I was building it as well. And it's like, and actually, their dad, which is my ex-husband now, he's the one that encouraged me to start the company, which was really cool. And then he quit his job a year into me building this company
Wow.
to start his own company. So I mean, there was a lot on the table, right? It was like, I look at risk and I'm like, what's the worst case scenario? Okay, well, if I go bankrupt, then yeah, that'll suck, but I know I'm employable. I know I can interview well. I know I could go get a job. And if that's a worst case scenario, then I'm going to do it. So I take a lot of risk. And I think that I don't know, there was a lot on the table, there was a lot of risk involved, and I felt like didn't have a choice to quit. Like when you have that much riding on it.
Mhm. No, fast forwarding a couple of years past the start, now that you've been running it for a few years, like what does that, feeling or the process look like for you now that you're in the, I guess you'd say beyond the scaling mode of your business of growing it even bigger?
hmm I spent a lot of time and effort in the first few years getting systems in place and putting people in place, not just to serve clients, which I think is a mistake that agencies make where they only hire, they have work, so they hire a videographer, they hire a copywriter, they hire whoever it may be to serve the clients, and they don't put any effort on their own companies. I kind of did the opposite. I sucked it up and took really low margins for years building the company because I reinvested everything that I could back into the business to hire people to actually figure out how to run the company. So it's cool now. I have a team of 15 and the business, it doesn't run without me by any means, but a lot of pieces of it do. So things like client strategy. One of our strategic advisors for clients is out of the office right now. And I've been jumping in a little bit more to client strategy for the first time in like 2 years. Now I have a sales team in place that's out selling. So like we were talking about COVID and how it's been treating my business. We've definitely taken a hit, but not having the weight on my shoulders of running the company, figuring out what to do with the team, and having to do all the sales has been really helpful. So I think that answers your question.
No, I think it is a perfect answer, and and it brings me to the thought of, like I said, as I've seen a lot of your content on LinkedIn, kind of what role has that played for, the growth of your business and the expansion of your brand?
Yeah, so I've been on LinkedIn for 2 years now, and my LinkedIn is a big part of our strategy. Like my sales team goes in and adds our prospects so that my content starts popping up for them. I don't ever really talk specifically about the company or our services. And I almost don't have to because I am someone who's growing a business, a bootstrap business that has been so much blood, sweat, tears, everything that you can think of going into it. And I'm talking to other people that are building businesses. So it's kind of like that camaraderie. I would say a lot of the growth that we've experienced in the last 2 years is attributed to LinkedIn.
Gotcha. Now, what was that like? I mean, just starting that journey, because I have some people that reach out to me, like they see my show and they see other people doing content. And one of the things that they talk about is like they're a little nervous to start putting content
hmm
out there. So what was that like? What was that thing that really helped you kind of get to that point where you're like, you know what? We should just start putting content out there.
Do you follow Quentin Allums on LinkedIn?
I've seen some of
Or he
some of
goes
the
by
stuff.
Q. Yeah. He is local to Milwaukee. Well, one, there's a ton of people in Milwaukee that are doing this LinkedIn thing, which is cool because we all kind of like fuel each other. But Q encouraged me for months to get started. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. I had no desire to do it. I didn't want to be like a talking head on LinkedIn. And now that's totally what I am. But he said, I'm growing a LinkedIn presence. Will you shoot a video for me? And I was like, sure. He never even published that video because he said it was horrible. But we had coffee a few times and he just kind of went about convincing me like, you have a good story. I think you'd be great on LinkedIn. And finally, I ended up hiring his company to help with like shooting and editing videos and stuff like that. So at that point, I really had no choice. I was just like forced to be accountable. At the beginning, he would tell me to shoot some videos on my phone to see how they perform versus like professionally shot videos. And if I didn't shoot them by the time we next met, he would make me sit there in front of him and shoot the video on my phone. And I was like, I'm not doing it. And he's like, yes, you are. And I was like, okay, like, I guess I am. I'm not very good at taking orders whatsoever, but it kind of taught me to get over the fear and get consistent with my content. So I'm the kind of person that if I don't want to do something, I will push it off indefinitely until I find a reason to never do it. And I need someone like a business coach or like Q or whoever that is to kind of hold me accountable.
Well, I'll say Q has done a great job because I've definitely seen like I said, the series of videos that you've done, and even with the creative side, to where I think one of the early ones that I started seeing more was things that people say in SaaS.
Ah.
Now, where did you get the idea, or I guess who came up with the idea of like, hey, you know what, this is a good video for us to do?
I come up with a lot of those ideas of things that I think will be funny. Like I've been shooting some of those while I've been at home too on my iPhone, like and getting my kids involved. Like I did one on like strategies to hide from your kids at home. And they were so excited to get involved, even though I was like making fun of them. They were like coming up with all these scenarios in which they could roast themselves. It was very funny. Once you start creating content consistently, you kind of start thinking in content. So you have a conversation and you're like, oh, that would be a great topic, or people might be interested in this. Or even when I'm reading or listening to podcasts, I take those little nuggets and then turn it into something for myself. So my team also, though, will sometimes submit ideas to me. Like one day we were in a meeting pre-COVID and they said, we should shoot a video on all of your weird habits. And I was like, well, what do you mean weird habits? And the funny thing is, Logan on my team walked out of my office and went to tell the rest of the team, and they had this thing shot in 45 minutes.
Oh wow.
And yeah. So apparently they're all watching me, and I have some certain things that I do. Like every time I would walk into the office, I'd be on the phone, I'd be like marching in my heels. So they shot like someone on my team making fun. I should send you that video. But once I got my team involved in doing some of this stuff too, they have lots of ideas as well. So it's been a pretty cool journey.
And I mean, it sounds like you have a amazing team that you've built around, your business and just around the mission of what you guys are doing for your clients. So tell us a little bit about the services that your agency provides.
Yeah, so it's kind of changing lately. It's one cool thing that coronavirus has changed for us is we were selling inbound retainer packages that were certain amounts of content intended to generate leads for companies. And now we are just thinking very outside of the box. Like we were a lot more productized before, and we still have prices and stuff like that published on our website, which is something we do for transparency so that people can understand what it actually costs to work with an agency, because no other agencies really publish that stuff.
Yeah.
But now we're starting to look at like account-based marketing and how we can creatively open doors and how we can get creative with video now that everyone's working remotely. So yeah, stay tuned for more updates, but we have tons of information on our website too on our services.
Awesome. So speaking of your content that you put out there and, the services and the changes that are going there, where can people find you online and where can they follow you to see all the updates?
Yeah, well, the website is accelitymarketing.com, Accelity. When I named the company that, I got a bunch of feedback like, no one's ever going to know how to say that. And stubborn, I did it anyway. And then you can find me on social media, the Jackie Hermes. There's another Jackie Hermes that took just Jackie Hermes. So I added a very bougie of me. So that's on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, which I'm not super active on, but you can find me
Okay, awesome. Now, before we wrap up, a question that I like to ask every guest that comes on is when you think about, your entrepreneurial journey, what are two lessons that you've learned along the way that you would say, you know what, these are two lessons that I think every entrepreneur should learn or experience to be successful in their journey?
Mhm. I think that moving faster than feels comfortable is something that every entrepreneur has to learn how to do. I talk to people all the time who spend a long time in planning, and by the time they get a product or service out there, they have competitors in the market, or they've overthought it, or people don't actually even want the service as they put it out. I was talking to someone else who is on LinkedIn, and he's starting a new agency, and he was like, "Well, how did you build all of this?" And I said, go test, go talk to people and see if they would buy those services. I bet you could get all the ideas you need for your services by trying to sell it. And then the second piece of advice that took me a really long time to learn is taking bigger risks. I've always taken risks, but I never took like the big scary risks that are going to get me to my giant dreams until probably 2 years ago, where I started, like really hiring in advance and buying technology and just looking at things that as a Midwestern woman bootstrapping a company, I was running it a little too conservatively previously. So I think those are my two lessons.
Awesome. Well, Jackie, thank you so much for coming onto the show and sharing your
Yes.
story, your wisdom. To everyone that's watching or listening, definitely go to all the outlets that Jackie mentioned and check out her content and to check out her business, because I think you will definitely be in for a treat, and there'll be a lot of wisdom and value for you to get from everything that she shared. Thanks for tuning in to the Business Talk Library. If you like what you heard and you want to hear more, be sure to click the subscribe button and follow us on all social media platforms as the Business Talk Library.